Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers. Good evening to my audience of This Week in Interview. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. It's a pleasure to be with you. I always say this time on a Wednesday is the highlight of my typical week because I get to spend an hour with you. An hour. So sometimes we indulge and we go for 90 minutes if our guest is available, or if the topic is so engaging that it would feel disruptive to just stop after 60 minutes. So welcome to you, my regular listeners. Thank you for making This Week in Interview integral part of your weekly schedule. There's so many things going on that I really appreciate, and I don't take it for granted that you make This Week in Interview part of your schedule. So tonight we are going to talk about a topic that raises emotion and all types of conflicts in terms sometimes of patriotism, sometimes conflicts in terms of our own family history and our legacy. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the exercise of the government to take possession of people's property, specifically their land. And sometimes it's land that's in your family for 3 and 4 generations. And then one day some guy steps up to you and says, "Sir, that piece of land that you have is ideal for X and X and X purpose. And we're going to send a surveyor on Thursday." Or sometimes you hear about it after the surveyor has been there. All kinds of stuff. So we wanted to have a little topic with you and to discuss how can you react in a legal way when that happens. What are your rights? What are the privileges of the government? And so on. So that's our topic tonight. The topic tonight is the involuntary acquisition of your land by the government. Put it in simple terms. There are more technical terms, whatever, but it's the takeover of your land by government for what the government declares is for the public good or for public purposes. Quick break. When we come back, I'm going to introduce you to my guest, Mr. Attorney at Law, Mr. Justin Simon. He is well versed and well qualified to talk to us about that topic. So without much further ado, let's go quick to our introductory break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, listeners. Welcome back. And in case you missed the initial introduction, you are listening to This Week in Interview today, July the 19th, 2023. And tonight, our topic of conversation is the involuntary takeover of a citizen's land by the government. My guest tonight is Mr. Justin Simon, attorney at law. As I said before, those of you who are regular listeners, you know what we do on this program. We bring you contemporary topics, bring it to you from a different angle and from a different perspective. We tend to make you the most educated group of listeners in all of media because we do this differently from everybody else. If tonight is the first time that you're joining us for This Week in Interview, welcome. I hope you find us sufficiently engaging that you come back and become a regular listener yourself. Those of you who are in Dominica, listening to us on RVR Jams Radio, welcome. Thank you to the management of RVR Jams Radio on VG Play Channel 59 for carrying This Week in Interview live. Also in Toronto Marketplace, SBE Radio online carries This Week in Interview live. Folks, I invite you to share the link to this program. It's on the screen, linktree.linktree/TDN network is where what you could send to someone. And when they get that link, they can tune into this weekend interview either on YouTube, on Facebook, on our TDN TV net network, our TDN radio.net radio for those who are maybe driving or doing some kind of activity that prevents them from visually following the show. If you don't do Facebook, there's tdntv.net. So welcome to everyone and welcome to my guest. But before I do that, let me ask, I was asking you to share the link, but also if you're viewing us on YouTube or on Facebook or on one of the other social medias like Instagram or Roku, I want you to like our video first of all. If you like us, I wouldn't want you to lie, but if you like us, give us a like. I would like you to subscribe so that you will not miss another brilliant show that we have in the future. Hit the notification button. So every time there's a program on TDN TV or TDN radio or on our Facebook page, you will be notified. And also leave us a comment. Leave us a comment. Tell us what we can do better, what we can do differently, also what you like. You know, sometimes people only comment when there is something to complain about. I want you to comment even if there's nothing to complain about, even if it's to tell us that we're doing a good job so that the staff that I have who help me bring this program to you can feel encouraged. And so, folks, I want to tell you that tonight we are going to be talking about a subject that is emotional. People are very sensitive and can be hot-tempered when it comes to their land, because a lot of folks who are like us, who come from very humble beginnings, sometimes the only thing that we have to leave to our children and our grandchildren is the land on which we live, the land on which we farm, what we call our own. And of course, that is further exacerbated because we come from a people who were enslaved and therefore we owned nothing. And so our forebears really dug deep, literally dug deep into the soil and came out as owners of this property, some of the same property on which they were enslaved, and passed it on to us. And so we're very proud to know that we're carrying on the legacy of our forebears, whether it's if they left us a home, we expanded on the home. If they left us land, we expanded on the production of the land. And just, you know, the land itself has value because you can go to the bank and you can use your land as security to start a business. You can use your land as security to expand on your home. You can use your land as security to send your kids to university, and all of these things that comes with ownership. And so when one morning you wake up and somebody shows up at your door and say, Mr. Drago, you own that piece of land over there. We want it. We want it because when I used to work at the water company, sometimes we had to do that. We want it because that's the only place and the best place where we can place a water tank or a reservoir to supply water to the village. In the case of Dominica, in recent times, folks have been subjected to that, almost the entire village of Wesley, because their land, not only where they farm, but their land where they live, was said to be deemed to be necessary for the construction of an international airport. And it's not just restricted to there, but there are also other areas where folks have been experiencing such circumstances. How would you feel? How would you feel if where you are right now, where you live, or if you're a farmer where you make your living, how would you feel if somebody showed up and said, listen, we want it, and you don't have a choice to give it to us? And sometimes you're not even compensated for it. So that is tonight's topic. That's tonight's topic. I want you, when you go, to comment and tell us what you think about it, what emotions that it invokes in you. Maybe you don't have to wait until it happens to you, but put yourself in the shoes of someone who is experiencing that and comment on it as well as to what emotions it evokes in you. To help me with this conversation, of course, I always seek out well qualified guests that is going to shed light on it. I can talk about it from a layman's point of view, but sometimes it helps to have actual professional and technical counsel, so to speak. And so my guest tonight is attorney at law, Mr. Justin Simon, well known, well respected, renowned attorney at law, not just in Dominica, but regionally. And he is undoubtedly equal to any person whatsoever to talk to us about this most vexing topic, I think, in most instances, and at the very least concerning topic. Mr. Simon, you've been on before with me once before, but it's such a pleasure to have you back and to lean on your expertise to help us navigate what can be a very emotional subject. Welcome back to this week in interview. Your
Invitation.
mic. Go ahead.
My mic.
No, it was, but it's good. I think
It's
it was
good now.
unmuted. It's
Wonderful.
fine.
So I was saying good night, good evening to you, and good evening to your listeners. And thank you very much for inviting me to this program, so I can share some of my insights and knowledge. But I just want to make that one small reservation. I may not be the most qualified person to speak on that issue.
Why is that? Why is that?
But I can assure you that I have been to court on the matter of land acquisition, and in fact, I've been right up to our highest court, the Privy Council, in respect of that matter, as it concerned the land over in Antigua and Barbuda, where I reside.
So what makes you not the most qualified person?
Well, my humility, that's one.
That's a tremendous gift. Humility is, but it's not you saying it, it's me saying it. So.
Fair enough.
But no, I was very excited when I understood that you were available. I know busy men like you are not always available. You're always willing. I know you're always willing, but many times your schedule prevents you from being available. So I was really excited when I found out that yes, you were available and you could come on. So this, as I said, is a topic that is really can really hit someone deep in their heart. I have, before we go deep, I have two short videos that gives an example of why we're talking about this tonight.
Yeah.
And so if you don't mind, I would like to just run them quickly, and then we'll delve into the discussion. Just so, because we have a lot of listeners who are not Dominican, and even those who are Dominicans, they may not really be aware of what is happening and how it is happening. And I think it places what we're going to talk about in a good context. So as to play the first video, it is all credits to Emo News. For this is an interview that she did with a gentleman who is directly being affected. So let's play this first video.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Hi.
How are you?
Been better, been worse.
So tell us
Trying.
about David.
All right. Hi. I've been in DA for like 22, 23 years now. The land behind us is my property. I've been an organic farmer here for many years. And unfortunately,
So you are originally from the US?
I was born in the States.
Okay, and you live in Dominica for over 20 something years?
Yeah, about 22, 23 years.
And you live here at Marigot?
Yeah, in Hatton Garden.
Hatton Garden.
Yeah.
So, Mr. David, you said you have an issue that you need to make public, and you call
Desperately,
on Emo
yeah.
News.
Yeah.
Tell us what the issue is.
Okay. There's a quarry project to make materials for the international airport, which is being done above me, the quarry. I live on the river. It was the second cleanest river in the island up until now 17 days ago, when it was spoiled by the Chinese excavators and such. Where we're standing right now actually is my property. My actual boundary post was torn out by the Chinese, but somewhere right around where we're standing is my boundary, and they've torn out about 1/8 of a mile long of my property along the road with no agreement, no money given to me, no compensation, no mitigation or anything.
Right. And so that is one video. I'm going to just run the other video right away. It is compliments of Mary and John Finn of Castle Bruce. And we got this video via YouTube. So let's play that second one.
It's just since after I really heard the news, the feeling is very disturbing. Presently, I am the son of Celestine and Clemmy Austria. That's my parents. My dad's courage of land, as you can see, been cultivated by me for how many years. And what was disturbing about the place presently is that they, how should I put it? They came over by through letters and through letters by hand. They just come over, letter. Yeah, delivered letters, and they just come over and say, well, hey, we want that location, we want that piece of land for us to relocate some people. But what hurt me the most is that the people and them which I respect, and the parents of the village, of the community, which I work so diligently and long and hard with them, didn't have the guts to notify me or had a discussion or a meeting or something with me and say, well, hey, look, that XYZ, that's what we're going to do and stuff like that. They just come, they went to whoever came to them, and apparently they just say in the land, nobody's on the land because everybody's overseas. And they know definitely that I'm down here, and they know I'm down here long enough. And if you have to go details, how close and how much they know me, I'm a Porto laborite, and I work with them a lot of the years. And they know Mr. Drago know me, Bonnie know me, and the rest of the people them know me. They knows me. So with this heartbroken spirit and these heartbroken times, I will diligently fight for this piece of place.
Right. And so those place those two things in context. I think our conversation, where folks are saying that their property is being severely infringed upon without what they perceive to be proper consultation, no discussion of compensation, and they are feeling pretty helpless. Justin, I'm going to go to you and to ask you to place what is happening, like your frame around it in the context of the law and the legality of what these citizens of Dominica are facing.
Okay. I think our first reference point would be the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And we all know that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And it provides 117 that it is the supreme law of Dominica. And if any other law is inconsistent with this Constitution, the Constitution shall prevail, and the other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. So that would be your first reference point. What does your Constitution say in respect of your rights to your land? And at the beginning of the Constitution, there are declared fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual. And one of the fundamental rights is protection from deprivation of property, so that there is a certain amount of protection that you have in respect of your property, belongs to you, registered in your name, and persons as well as the state must respect your ownership and occupation of the land. The Constitution, and I refer to Section 6, it says, no property of any description shall be compulsorily taken possession of, and no interest in or right over property of any description shall be compulsorily acquired, except where provision is made by a law applicable to that taking of possession or acquisition for the payment within a reasonable time of adequate compensation. So the Constitution protects the individual from deprivation of property, but it does provide that if your property is compulsorily acquired or taken possession of, then adequate compensation must be paid within a reasonable time. And the law which addresses that in more specific and general terms would be your Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 5302 of your laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And it sets out the process and the procedure which must be followed if government is going to acquire or compulsorily acquire any land. Now, the word compulsory is being used because clearly government can, like any individual, say to a landowner, I'm interested in purchasing your land. Are you willing to sell? What price would you want for the land? And the two parties, government and the owner, can sit in discussions. Possibly the lawyer, the owner would get his lawyer, his or her lawyer, and they can discuss and come to an agreement. So there is no problem in respect of that, because each party will be respecting the rights of the other party. What the Land Acquisition Act does is to allow for the government to compulsorily acquire. So they acquire not by force, although it is said to be compulsorily, but your consent, the landowner's consent, is not required in those circumstances. And the law has to be followed to the letter. And it provides that, one, the land must be acquired for a public purpose, not a private purpose, not an individual purpose, but a purpose which is for the benefit of the public, the individuals or citizens of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And what the minister would have to do once that has been a decision of cabinet that so-and-so's land should be compulsorily acquired, then a declaration to that effect must be made. And that declaration, which would indicate certain particulars, and I will certainly indicate that to you, must first of all be given to the owner. So the owner must be served with that declaration, a copy of that declaration. If the owner cannot be found, possibly may have traveled or may not be living within that location, then the law requires that the declaration must be posted on a building in that locality, so that it is exhibited at various other places, so that it will come to the attention of the owner, whether by him seeing it or by persons who know him indicating to him, hey, government has made a declaration and they're notifying you that it is their intention to compulsorily acquire your property. And the information that must be placed in that notification or that notice must be, one, the parish or district in which the land is situated; two, a description of the land, giving the approximate area and such other particulars as are necessary to identify the land. For example, if the land is cultivated, what cultivation is, mangoes, oranges, banana, whatever crops, so that one can easily identify, okay, this is the particular piece of land. In addition to that, if a survey plan has been prepared, then the plan of the land must be there, as well as an indication of where the plan can be inspected. And that no doubt would be some department of government, whether the Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Agriculture, whatever. And then finally, the notification must indicate the public purpose for which the land is required. To build a school, for an airport, matters of that nature, would be in the interest of the public. So that notification must also include the purpose, the public purpose for which the land is being compulsorily acquired. Because only if there is a public purpose can that notification or declaration be considered to be lawful and legitimate. And once notification is given to the owner, then the notification must also be published in two publications of the Gazette, which is the official government newspaper. And on the second publication of the declaration, the law provides that the land shall vest absolutely in the state, so that it becomes the property of the state once the second publication has been made. You may wonder, well, at that stage, how can government simply acquire and for it to become the government's when there has been no discussions with the owner? But the owner then has the right to meet with government officials. And in fact, the government officials should really approach the owner in respect of discussions as to the cost. What does the owner want in compensation since you have now taken my land? And the provision is also made in the law that if the parties cannot agree on the compensation figure, then a board of assessment has to be appointed by the government. And in fact, the board would consist of 3 persons: the chairman, who shall be a resident judge, then a person who is appointed by the minister, and thirdly, a person to be nominated by the owner of the land, so that the owner himself will have representation on that board of assessment, which will then determine the value of the land and how much should the owner be paid. So that is the process which ought to be followed. Let me also indicate that before the government publishes the notification, if they have an interest in it, in the land, they can appoint an authorized officer of the government to go on the land, to survey, to determine the subsoil of the land, to find out whether the land is something which is appropriate for the purpose. For example, is there a river running through it? Is there a stream? Or is it, a place which has landslides? So they can do that kind of investigation and survey, so that they can then ascertain whether, yes, this is the land that I require for that particular purpose. And along those lines, they would also meet with the owner of the land, because respect is due. That is very important, so that there can be a discussion. The discussion may not very well end in the compensation figure, because that can be done subsequently, since there is a board of assessment that can be appointed for that purpose.
So one thing that's stuck in my mind is that you said it has to be a declaration of cabinet. So it's not one person, the minister or whoever it is,
Well,
or
yeah,
statutory body like the WASCO simply saying that we want to acquire this land. If fine, if they negotiate with the owner and the owner agrees, then fine. But in the case where it's compulsory or involuntary on behalf of the owner, it has to be something that is done at the cabinet level. That's what I'm
I
hearing.
would want to think so. Although the law itself indicates the minister makes the declaration, but we all know how ministers are supposed to act. And there would have to be cabinet authority in respect of that, so that would be discussed at cabinet level. Cabinet would make that decision, and the cabinet would then say to the minister, provide with the minister, look, yes, we agree, and you can proceed along those lines. So there would have to be. I cannot see how the minister on his own, without consultation with his cabinet colleagues, and without a decision being made by cabinet, come forward with that proposition, because the minister himself, although he represents, or he's a representative of the government, is not does not have the authority as cabinet would have to make such a decision and a determination.
Okay, so we are at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to take a quick commercial break, but I think you've really laid it out properly. Most everybody here, I'm thinking, will have understood what you said. The right to ownership of your property and the enjoyment of that ownership is a right that is enshrined in the Constitution. However, there are circumstances where, for a public purpose, that land may be of a greater good than just the enjoyment of one or a few owners, and the government and the law lays down circumstances and procedure how that asset or that resource can be put into service for the community. And so when you come back from the break, I want to ask you about you know about whatever rights. I know you touched on it a little bit, that the owner has, is there any recourse that the owner can pursue to change the government's mind and make them look elsewhere. Let's take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Presented by. People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
If you live in Canada, the US, and the UK and are looking for Dominica products including cocoa sticks, bay rum, coffee, soaps, crafts, and other popular Dominica items, then look no further. You can now shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, a secure, easy-to-navigate website selling a wide variety of Dominica-made and Dominica-inspired products. When you shop on BuyDominicaOnline.com, you are helping to grow Dominica's economy. Go to BuyDominicaOnline.com and enjoy home away from home.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, We do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
Welcome back, listeners. Thank you for joining us for this week in interview. Tonight, our topic of conversation is the compulsory acquisition of land by the government. So to put it in layman terms, what happens if the government has a project to do and the government determines that your land is the best location or is needed for that project, whether you agree or you don't agree, government within the law can acquire that land. But our guest, attorney at law Justin Simon, is laying out that there is one very strict conditions under where this can be applied, and two, there is a very well laid out procedure under which it is supposed to be carried out, so that even if you may not be happy that it's being done, at least you will feel respected and listened to and heard. We ran two videos. One complements MO News, which we edited it so you could find the MO News, the gentleman up at Hatton Garden. You can find that on YouTube. You can search for the video, and the one from Castle Bruce was from Marian Johnfin. It's on Facebook. So Justin, I wanted to ask you about, just is there any recourse whatsoever? I used to work at the Wasco, the water company in Dominica, and sometimes we're looking for land to build a water intake. We're looking for easements that run through people's land to run the pipeline, and we look for land to build reservoirs. And those clearly are for public purposes. Thankfully, in my time, I never had to go through where there was an unwilling owner. And that was because if we didn't get agreement from an owner, we would seek a different location where there was an owner who was willing. But I was always of the impression that the onus was on the government to prove that there was no readily available or equivalent alternative spot, but I didn't hear any of that in what you laid out, which sort makes me think that was not really an accurate interpretation of that owner can say, make a case that my property is not the most ideal, or there is another property right next door that is equivalently qualified.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that. Talk to the listeners about that. Whatever, is there any recourse of the owner? And of course, the way you laid it out, it depends on the, how you want to say, the good manners or the gentlemanliness of the agent of the government. But isn't it like it opens the door for abuse of owners a little bit?
Well, thankfully, the Constitution also makes provision that if the owner is not satisfied with the public purpose for which the land is declared to be compulsorily acquired, or if the process or procedure, the steps, were not being followed, then the owner can apply directly to the High Court for relief. So that provision or the compulsory acquisition provision is subject at any time to questioning through the High Court by the owner. As
Right.
you've indicated, it is possible that the owner may say, look, it is wanted for this for a reservoir, but if you look at my location of my land, where it's situated, how it is, that cannot be the best, that cannot be suitable for a reservoir. So you can go to court and question the issue of the public purpose. It is possible too that government says they want to acquire, let us say, 50 acres for building a school. Clearly, 50 acres is really not necessary for building any kind of school. And one can again go to the court and question that, so that you have access, direct access to the High Court. If you are not satisfied either with the process or the procedural steps which have been taken, since they were not taken in conformity with the Constitution, or you're questioning whether or not the public purpose, which has been stated, is a proper public purpose. And that is why the Constitution makes it very clear that, not the Constitution, the law makes it, the Act makes it very clear that when you are notifying the owner, as well as when you are publishing the declaration or the intention of government to acquire, one of the things that you must express in there is the public purpose for which the land is acquired. So let us have sufficient information in that notification and declaration so that we can address our minds to it, look at it objectively, and say, yes, that's a good purpose, or I can understand why government wants it. And even if you are not happy with the decision that has been made, once the public purpose is there and every other requirement has been fulfilled, your only resort thereafter is for compensation within a reasonable time.
And how is compensation determined? Is it market value? How is compensation?
Certainly, market value. And what would necessarily happen, and I know that is what happens, that government will then send out its own land valuer, and you, the owner, send out your own land valuer, and one will then have to sit, look at the two values, and see whether you can come to some compromise figure if they are not identical. If you don't, then clearly you will then have to, government will then have to appoint the assessment board to make that determination. And if government is slow, prevaricates in respect of making that appointment of the board of assessment, again, the owner can go to the court and seek relief in respect of the compensation and provide his necessary documentation, the valuation, the survey, the purpose for which the land was being used by the owner, the value which he considers it to be. For example, if it is, banana plantation, fruits, what he was, the revenue he was obtaining from it, all of that he can provide to the court or the board of assessment. And then government, of course, is given an opportunity for them to bring their own surveyor and valuer, and for that determination to be made. And what is important in respect of the board of assessment is that you have a judge as the chair, but that the two other members, one will be representing the government, one will be representing the owner, so that on that board, the owner has a representation, quite apart from the fact that if evidence is being given, he will have his own lawyer to push, the evidence and to make his submissions in respect of what he thinks will be fair to the owner. But the process itself, the owner will have some say in it because of the fact that the owner will have a representative on that board.
Right. And so what I'm hearing, that the impression, the perception that the government has the absolute right is not quite true. Like you say, the consent of the owner is not required.
Mhm.
However, the government doesn't just have absolute power to just say, I want this, give it to me.
Yeah.
And you can kick and scream and there's nothing that you can do about it. There is something, in preparing for the show, I read something about abandonment, where the acquisition of the government can be considered to be abandoned after a certain period of time if the government hasn't utilized the acquired land for the purpose that they said they were going to acquire it.
Indeed. Within a certain time frame, if the
Mm-hmm.
government does not proceed with respect to developing the land as it indicated for that public purpose, it can be considered as abandoned, and application can be made to the court for the establishment of ownership in the former owner. So that it's not a case where government will say, look, I'm going to take your land. And particularly, you've got to recognize that sometimes individuals will act out of selfish motives or because they have a problem with you. And then they just leave the land right there and think, well, I have, taken it away from you. So there's nothing that you can do. But that is not so, because the law makes it quite clear within a certain period. I can't tell you exactly what the
I just
period.
remember in making notes, I remember there was something in the law that spoke about abandonment.
Yes, but it does do that.
Yeah.
It does indicate that. And maybe
Because,
as I read.
and the reason why that struck me, Justin, is because we know in the case of Wesley and the international airport, it's a couple of years now, right? I mean, time flies, so it's a few years now that the government has acquired a lot of that property. And it's only recently they've started really making moves that indicate that they're going to build the international airport.
Yep.
So it is really, the education of the landowners is required to let them really fully understand their rights as owners. As you said, that the government cannot just take your land against your will and for just any reason. Or sometimes you hear some folks say that they were not even given a proper reason. Some people have been compensated, some people have not been compensated. So tonight's discussion, I think, is so relevant to really give a little bit of glimmer of hope to the individuals who are undergoing that experience.
Yes.
And so I think the advice would be to consult the legal person to really
Or-
understand
Always.
Mhm.
Yeah, always that makes a lot of sense for them to do so. And I've just seen the provision here. It's Section 9 of the Land Acquisition Act, and it's 3 months is the period.
3 months.
3 months. If within 3 months after entry has been made on any land, the land is not acquired or is abandoned, in other words, government has not gone further with respect to dealing with the land, then any person interested in the land may serve a notice on the authorized officer requiring that the acquisition of the land either be completed or abandoned. So you give notification in respect of that. And if within 1 month thereafter nothing is done, then the acquisition of the land shall be deemed to have been abandoned. Deemed, meaning that automatically must be considered as abandoned, because 1, government has not acquired it. 2, they have done nothing in respect of it. 3, they themselves have not indicated that the land has been abandoned. So there is a time frame which is given in respect of that.
Wow. So there is it's a slight deviation from what we're talking about, which is the compulsory acquisition of land. One of the audience on Facebook is asking about I guess the allocation of government land to private citizens, which is the opposite. And is there room for a challenge to? He said, ask Attorney Simon, can a citizen challenge in the courts government decision to sell government property to a private citizen?
No, because the government is the owner. It's like you consider the government an owner as you are the owner, and you can sell your land for whatever value that you see it as. What we, however, must be concerned about is that there must not be an inequality, so that if government sells a piece of land to me, $5 a square foot, but next to my land is another piece of crown land. Well, we shouldn't say crown because we're not crowned in Dominica. I'm talking as well about Antigua. But state land, and you sell it to somebody for $1 because you and the person happen to be on the same political wavelength, then that can be challenged because it is not fair. Right. So government must act, with a certain amount of fairness when it deals with individuals. And there must be some consistency in their approach.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that public property belongs to the public, but we've given the government the authority to manage it. And therefore, if they choose to sell it, they can sell it, but at the same time, they cannot give it away. They
must sell it within, for reasonable amount. Of course, if they want to give it away, they may give it away to a charitable, purpose. For example, somebody wants to open up a school and they might want to make that donation because the school itself, is beneficial for the community. But it must be looked at along those lines. Benefit to the public.
Right. And so if we come back to the videos that we shared at first, where one person has a concern because a road is just made through his property, apparently without proper consultation. If you listen to the entire video, it says that somebody showed up at his home and said, "We are now your new neighbors." And then the excavator came. After the excavator started work, they notified him that a surveyor would come, but there was no real discussion. That's what the video goes on to say. If respect the guy at Castle Bruce, he said that he received letters, which may indicate some kind of procedure maybe was being followed. And maybe the letters were for the survey. When I announced this program, I did get quite a few amount of feedback. There was one person that shared something with me that showed that the government was notifying him that one of the agents would come onto the land to perform surveys and so on and so forth. So it's applied. It seems like it's applied in different measures and different levels at different locations. But if we were to speak directly to the people of Wesley, I know you don't have the direct information of everybody. How would you go about maybe advising them? I know I think there is a group that's trying to represent the interests of the people of Wesley, where a large portion of the village was lands were acquired. Also, their farming, the agriculture was acquired many months ago. We saw videos of people's planting fields being bulldozed a year and a half, 2 years ago, before the first stroke was being, bucket of excavated, the earth was started. How would you advise them to proceed?
Okay, let me say, notification to the owner is important. And apart from that, there must be publication in the Gazette, because that is the official notification, not only to the owner, but to the general public, that government is intending to compulsorily acquire. So sending a letter, in my mind, is not sufficient. There must be proper notification given to the owner. If the letter sends a letter, then it must give all the details that are necessary and the public purpose for which the land is being acquired. Secondly, the minister will normally appoint an authorized officer to transact the business or to address the acquisition. And it is possible that before government makes its mind, it may want to do a preliminary survey. So it may send the authorized officer, who may then bring with him a surveyor for them to enter on the land, to survey, to take levels, to dig, to check the boundaries. All of that, of course, with the knowledge of the owner. But then the publication is important in the Gazette. There must be that publication so that you can't just go there. Notification must be given so that you are aware that what they're doing is something which is official, since it is in the Gazette. And then they can proceed along those lines. So it is important that the process is followed step by step, and the law provides for that. And as I've indicated, if that process is not being followed, then the Constitution gives the owner the right to challenge the acquisition by government. So I would suggest that persons who are that affected should seek legal advice. They may not know whether or not it has been, the intention has been published in the Gazette, but I'm sure the lawyer would be able to make the necessary searches, whether at the printery or from their own documentation, as to whether or not that process has begun, because it is important for that to begin before a preliminary occupation or preliminary survey of the land can begin, because that is what gives that authorized officer the legal right to go in there. So that is very important. And as I've indicated also, the question of compensation must be paid within a reasonable time, so that there must be discussions in respect of payment. Let the owner himself provide or get a valuer to value the land, because by that time he would have known from the notice which he receives what are the boundaries of the land that government intends acquiring. And on that basis, he can get his valuation and then meet with the authorized officer in respect of making his wishes known in terms of the price he wants. And then discussions can begin. If that is not done, again, he can go to the court. Either go to the court directly, or he can go to the court and make an application for the Board of Assessment to be constituted or instituted.
So there's a process. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
How far along must that process be before, say, the government can start to make use of the land? Yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is that we may not agree, as the owner, I may not agree, but if I'm a difficult person, it takes me a year to convince me. The government don't have to wait for a year to start.
No, they don't.
At the same time, though, they cannot just say, well, let's start and the paperwork and procedure will catch up. Where is that balance?
Well, don't forget, what the law indicates is that once the government has published its intention twice in the Gazette, on the second publication, ownership belongs now to the government. So even though the government may not, there may not be any change of ownership, the owner is still there as registered in the certificate of title. The fact that there has been this second publication takes away from him any rights in respect of the land. So that is why it's important for you to ensure that there has been publication in the Gazette.
So the only recourse that an owner has in that case is to make sure that, say, for example, your notice wasn't posted, or it wasn't served on me properly,
That's
then I
right.
maybe can go to the court to say, listen, can you ask them to stop because they have not followed the
Yeah.
procedure?
Challenge. You can now challenge what they're doing because they have not followed the proper procedure.
Right. And then the court would rule one way or the other and
In respect of the
correct
matter.
it in respect of that.
Yeah.
So I mean that is very enlightening. Because people perceive the government is like a Goliath and they are David, and sometimes they might feel helpless. But there's legal advice, and if you cannot afford legal advice, there are organizations. What comes to mind is Wave. Wave is about environmental, but because some of these projects have environmental impact, Wave is a resource that someone can go to get some information. They're not
Yes.
they're not lawyers. They won't be able to give you legal advice, but they'll be able to point you probably towards knowledgeable professionals in the area, in the field.
Yes. In fact, they could very well assess whether or not that your land is really a land that is suitable for that public purpose that government has declared. So they can assist you along those lines in respect of that. Because do not forget that just simply saying it's a public purpose, although on the face of it, that gives the government the right. But if you can question that public purpose, can that land be used for that purpose? Is it suitable for that purpose? Give me your environmental study. In respect of that, you can question the acquisition from the government. So it's not only looking at it from a legal point of view, one should also look at it from the environmental and purposeful sense of view.
Yeah, so for example, and I'm not just talking as a layperson, there's a lot of reports that the construction of the airport is going to affect, I think, 5 or 6 rivers. Someone could probably question, so my land is right on that river, which supplies water to 2,000 people in Marigot. Therefore, I don't think putting an airport runway on is serving a greater purpose because it's going to deprive 2,000 people of fresh drinking water.
Precisely. And what alternative has been made in respect of them? And is it necessary that that land with all those rivers should be the correct parcel of land that should be used for that particular purpose? So all of this can be looked at and assessed.
No, certainly. Wow. You know, it is so important to speak to a professional in the field because sometimes you look at an elephant and the elephant looks like it's difficult to chew on, but a proper hunter will tell you this is where his heart is. If you attack him here, that's where you can drop him, and that's exactly what you've done for us tonight, Justin.
Yeah. And in fact, you were mentioning David and Goliath, but do not forget, David was able to slay Goliath. Notwithstanding his height, his strength, and his build. So it's important that the citizen should not feel himself, cowed because it's the government, because his concerns must also be taken into consideration, because do not forget, the land was his, and as you earlier mentioned, that may be the land which has moved from generation to generation, or which he uses for getting his income, his revenue. So he has a certain interest which has to be protected. Whereas we accept that government's intention for a public purpose, which is for the larger community, takes precedence, that individual must also ensure that what government says it's going to be doing, it's something which is practical and also for the benefit of the public as a whole. If not, he can question the public purpose. And your courts are there for that particular rule.
So he can question the public purpose and he can question the procedure.
The process and procedure which has been used. And he can also say that the compensation which is being offered to me is not acceptable because I want more than that. And he can go to the High Court or get the Board of Assessment appointed for that particular purpose.
Or the secret. So excellent. So, Attorney Justin Simon, thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that we can talk about, but I think in simple terms, what we've achieved here tonight is to give some hope and some courage to landowners who are facing this predicament, where they feel the government has, the full force of the law behind them, and the most you can do is put your hands on your head and cry in distress. And you say no. If you get with a professional, um, if you get with a person, they may be able to show you that you can at least get a better deal out of it than it seems like what you're getting,
Indeed.
because the Constitution is designed to protect you, that individual citizen. Someone
Indeed.
is saying, interesting, because without the ESIA being made public, a proper assessment of the suitability of the airport site cannot be determined, especially in view of the fact that the planning has not been involved in the design and approval of this major project.
So in that circumstance, a letter should be written requesting from ESIA the project documents, whether it has been reviewed by them, whether they have accepted it. So all of those questions. And what I would suggest is that the individuals who are affected should not act individually. They should come together as a unit, because there is strength in numbers, and act along those lines.
Yes,
but that is important.
Yeah, and it's not to give the impression that we are anti-Dominica getting an airport.
No.
The idea is that if it's not done properly, it will be a white elephant and a waste of money.
Precisely, and taxpayers' money besides. So you want to ensure that everything that is being done properly, and the project which government has in mind is suitable for that particular area, taking everything into consideration.
And we are asking a very big sacrifice of the people of Wesley. If we say the airport is for the benefit of all of Dominica, we're asking just a few hundred people to give up their land, give up their livelihood, give up their housing, so for the benefit of all of us. So we should not be looking at them in any animosity if they're trying to ensure that their sacrifice is not in vain.
Not in vain, indeed. Agreed with you entirely on that. And that's how we must look at it. Because do not forget, government is for the people, of the people, and by the people. And one of the things that we must recognize, it does not matter what the political flavor of the government is. Once it is acting as a government, it's acting for the whole of the country. And that is what our politicians seem to be forgetting these days.
And that is why some of our citizens are also forgetting, because with the video from Castle Bruce, the gentleman, who happens to be a personal friend of mine, by the way, he seems to be vexed that it came to his doorstep. Why him? Because he's supposed to have a certain amount of privilege because he's a known supporter and worker of the party. But really and truly, it should not be that. As a matter of fact, if you are a supporter of the government, it means that you have access to the folks, and you should really use that access to make sure that what they're doing is in the interest of the community.
The community as a whole. That's right.
Yeah. So I have indulged you for an extra 15 minutes, but I think this was very important. I think you've managed to place this whole debate in a different light. You've opened the box and you've shone a light inside of the box, so that folks don't just see it as a big black hole. Some people hear of eminent domain. What is eminent domain? Some people hear about the right of the government to take your land because it's no. The Constitution clearly states that you are protected from deprivation of your property.
And it can only be taken
right
under certain circumstances and certain procedures being followed.
very
That's
strict
important.
and narrow
That's right.
procedures and circumstances.
Yes.
So I thank you for that. I'll allow you to give some closing remarks. I don't know if there's any area that I have that we didn't get to touch on.
No,
You can touch on that.
I think you've covered everything. I think I did see a question as to who appoints the Board of Assessment, and it is the minister who would appoint the Board of Assessment. So the request would be made in writing, and I have done that in the past, to require the minister to appoint the Board of Assessment if we cannot agree on the compensation figure. And if the minister takes an unreasonable amount of time, that individual can go to the High Court for the High Court to give him the necessary relief and directions, so that
Right.
the court is always there to give you the necessary protection.
So the minister appoints a judge.
Well, he appoints the board, and you will normally utilize the resident judge. And what normally would happen is that the minister would write to the Chief Justice. So the minister doesn't appoint the judge. The minister will write to the Chief Justice, who would then appoint a resident judge to be the chair. And the minister would then appoint one member of the 3-member panel as the government's representative, and the owner is given the opportunity to also appoint somebody who is his representative, so that you can see the committee would have a very objective flow. So it's not only the government side, but the owner side would also be heard, and you have a judge who would use his judicial acumen to ensure that there is some consensus when it comes to the determination of the matter.
That is awesome. Thank you. Well, I think we'll close it here. Sometimes if you go on too much, people try to take in too much, and they forget the crust of what we communicated. But I guess what you clearly communicated is that we as citizens are never helpless. The Constitution is there, and if there is an area where we feel that we're not being fairly treated, or constitutional rights as citizens are being abused, we have recourse, and in this instance, we clearly do. And if it's simply to educate the public, that then forces the government to follow the required procedure, we've achieved quite a bit.
Indeed. And let me also indicate that there is also the right of appeal, either from the Board of Assessment by going directly to the court, or from the High Court to the Court of Appeal and to our CCJ.
Right. You said you've gone as high as the Privy Council for the countries where that, yeah.
Well, like for Antigua, we'd go to the Privy Council. But the beautiful thing with our CCJ, which I endorse totally, fully and entirely, is that it is made up of individuals who themselves are homegrown, culturally aware, and a part and parcel of the society of which over which they preside. And that makes a big difference.
All right. So I want to say thank you. And thank you to our listeners. We had a very active listener. Alvin was on there. Great contribution. Margot La Rock. I saw, you see, I start to call names, and I'm at risk of missing people. But but I appreciate everybody and their participation. I had a question from Gifters John when I announced you were my guest, and he said, "Is that the same Justin Simon from Soufriere?"
No, not Soufriere. Not Soufriere. Scott's Head, Kashaku.
Kashaku.
They're two different villages.
Who was the head boy at the SMA?
Oh, jeez, he remembers that? And not only was I head boy, I was elected head boy.
You were elected the head boy.
Yes, that was the first time that the academy, rather than just appointed by the principal, that it was done by way of elections.
Right. So you were not selected. You were elected.
Elected. I remember that very well.
Yeah. So Gifters, there you have your answer. It is your body from SMA.
Indeed.
Justin Simon. And of course, we are so grateful to you for taking the time on a Wednesday evening to come and to help educate us. And I think you did an excellent job in that and really clarified it in our mind and make it more approachable, hopefully, for all the folks who are facing um, that situation in Dominica. And we hope that it leads to a more just
Yes, result.
way of doing it. Result.
Yes, of doing things. Indeed.
So
All
thank
right.
you
Well,
again.
thank you very much for the opportunity. My pleasure as usual.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Good night, everybody.
good night. So, listeners, I hope you agree with me that this was very enlightening. We had very good information. I think there are a lot of opportunities that uh, were pointed out by Attorney Justin Simon, um, where um, folks, it's not that you want to fight any project that government does, but you want to make sure that at least the laws and the constitutions and yourself as citizens are respected. As I said, I have worked in situations where we've required private land to build water systems for the good of the community. So I understand it, but it should always be done in a respectful manner. It should always be that, you know, we do it where we respect. It's never good that you take somebody's land who had no intention of selling their land. But having put that person in such a distressful circumstance, we make sure that they are properly compensated and they understand the process and that they don't feel disrespected. So there we have it. For you folks, I want to thank you so much for joining us again. Give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bar, leave us a comment. We really appreciate all our listeners tonight and spread the word. The video is up on Facebook, so share the link with the folks from Wesley, folks from Salisbury, folks from Castle Bruce, Marigot. And again, just to to really point it out, that first video that we played, although it is associated with the airport, because the reason why they encroaching on that property is because there is a rock over by Hatton Garden where they perceive that they can crush that rock to get aggregate for the airport. And so even if they're removed from the actual site of the airport, the land is still being affected, you know? And so you never know when you'll be next. Okay. So don't allow the system to break down. And then when it comes to you, you do not have a system to protect yourself with or to seek refuge. Um, let right be right. Don't wait for it to come home to complain or cry. But good night, folks. This has been another episode of This Week in Interview. I think we achieved our objective to bring you a contemporary topic from a different perspective and leave you more educated than when you came. Good evening, everyone. Oh, one of our regular listeners, Miss Sharon Dorival, your your significant other, your husband asked me to give you a shout out on this speaking interview. So blessings to you. Yeah, those of you who are not familiar, she's a writer, she's an author, Miss Sharon Dorival, very prolific, very talented writer from the village of Coolibistry on the west coast of Dominica. So good night to you, good night, Hayden. And all of you, if you're celebrating your birthday or anniversary or graduation, congratulations, happy birthday, happy anniversary. If you happen to be in bereavement because you lost a loved one, our condolences to you. Just have good memories, and hopefully that will comfort you through your period of mourning and sorrow. I'm going to leave it there, and we'll do this again next week, Wednesday, for another episode of This Week in Interview. Until then, stay cool, stay safe, good night.